I'm Dr. Beth Hedva, the Director of Training and Counseling at the Canadian Institute for Transpersonal and Integrative Sciences, and the author of the book Betrayal, Trust, and Forgiveness. And I am just going to share my screen with you now and get started with our PowerPoint. So I'm going to put this way up here. Okay, so whether your lover has let you down, or you've been shattered by global events, or perhaps stabbed in the back by a coworker, betrayal provokes 5 very common reactions. And that first reaction is obsession about the betrayal and resentment towards the betrayer. This becomes a desire for vindication and retribution and often vengeance. This leads into harshly judging our betrayer, demonizing and dehumanizing them. Jung called this the projection of the shadow. And when we begin to go into the third reaction, where we generalize that shadow projection onto others deemed like our betrayer, we begin to stereotype. And this is the foundation for implicit bias, prejudice, and bigotry, and cynicism that pervades our societies today. That cynicism leads to the fourth reaction, which is self-betrayal, where we abandon our own ideals and no longer believe that our dreams and aspirations can be fulfilled. And filled with doubt, we move into the fifth betrayal reaction, which is suspicion and fear of future betrayals, and begin to control and manipulate to try to protect ourselves against future betrayals. So I like to think of these emotional reactions particularly as part of a universal contemporary rite of passage, particularly the second stage of growth out of 5 stages of growth, in which rites of purification and where a person confronts mental, emotional, and physical ordeals as potential spiritual tests. These tests come to us when, during the first stage of initiation, we experience some kind of an existential crisis and feel separated and isolated. These ordeals take us into a fear of loss, which then we begin to confront challenges, and it takes us into an experience of symbolic death or ego death. It's in the mourning of the loss of having our expectations met that we begin to start to confront our fears, our expectations, our attachments, our false beliefs, and we begin to come to accept ultimately reality as it is. This also brings us into accepting ourselves, our vulnerabilities, our limitations, as well as during the process of going through all of this, we discover newfound strengths and skills. And this takes us into the awakening of a new awareness of the human condition, where we begin to realize intuitively that life's challenges and betrayal is for giving you an opportunity to know yourself much better and the truth of your reality as a human being, including your needs, boundaries, and limits, as well as your dreams, true capacities, and full potential. This takes us into the awakening of our inner knowing or new awareness, where we use our intuition to gain direct guidance on what are the next steps to our own healing. And we awaken not only to the awareness of our own vulnerabilities and have compassion then for ourselves, but this leads to compassion for others and for the human condition and for the awareness of just how interconnected we all are, humans, animals, nature, and the environment. This realization brings us to the fourth stage of growth in this sacred, contemporary, universal rite of passage, where from the realization of personal spiritual awakening, we discover what it is that helps us heal. And we begin to become a model of healing for our own sake, but also for the sake of our communities and society and for the environment, where we begin to do what helps over what hinders and injures us, each other, and nature and our environment. So what's interesting is that these 5 steps of growth in an ancient initiatory rite of passage actually reflect different processes that we as therapists can provide for ourselves and also for our clients to heal existential crisis and the pain of separation. It helps to connect energetically to inner spiritual healing resources and outer healing resources. Cross-culturally, it's known that the breath contains subtle spiritual healing energy, and in the West, we know it also contains oxygen. So one way we can always connect with inner spiritual supports is through breath work, through soothing and calming the soul and relaxing the body and releasing stress with the breath. Outer healing resources include psychosocial support groups, as well as connecting in with social services and adjunctive community resources and medical services. Now, when we start confronting those ordeals, it really helps to develop witness consciousness and to observe stress reactions. As therapists, we use our clinical tools of observation, assessment, and evaluation. But it's also very helpful to learn mindful awareness and to train our clients in mindful awareness to support mental health and healing. When it comes to ego death, deep listening to emotions, listening and sharing our feelings with our whole body, heart, and soul allows for deep integration and processing of the emotions, which also through the whole body listening actually awakens our embodied awareness and intuitive inner resources, which then begin to guide us on our next step for healing, helping us gain insights and realizations of just what this whole process has been for giving to us so that we can give forth our gifts to the world. In birth of forgiveness, we empower ourselves and others to redeem the true self, our true nature, and to do what helps over what hurts. This brings us into the integration during the rebirth phase, where first we have the realization. What happens next is not only to realize what our needs are, but to communicate those needs. That helps us heal the resentment. In observing the injuries and what helps us heal as we realize what it is that we really need, we begin to heal the shadow projections. We become whole by owning our vulnerabilities and our strengths. At some point, we confront those contradictions that arise as a result of our family conditioning, social conditioning, and the collective shadows that our society contains and holds. And we discover not only what helps, but what is it that hurts. And we recognize that paradox and polarization is actually part of the growth process, which gives us an opportunity to choose to do what helps over what hurts. And in this process of choice and choosing what helps, we begin to become a model of what helps and heals. And we lead by example within our communities, embodying our truth, not only for our own sakes, but for the sake of others and for the sake of our environment. We begin to engage in grassroots healing, encouraging self and others to lead by example, to live in greater harmony and balance within oneself, with others, and with our environment and ecosphere. And in this very short 10-minute presentation, I don't have time to review the many examples within my clinical practice. I have many stories in my book, Betrayal, Trust, and Forgiveness, that are descriptions of this from the personal to the interpersonal to the societal and even to planetary environmental challenges that we face. So if you're interested in discussing this more, feel free to contact me at beth@integrativesciences.org. And thank you very much for your attention.